So, picture a cat falling from a tree. Like, in a fraction of a second, before it even consciously processes what's happening, its entire body just goes to work.
Right, it twists midair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every muscle, every tendon and bone adjusting in this perfect, fluid harmony, to stick the landing without a scratch.
It's incredible to watch.
It really is. But then I want you to contrast that image with, say, the dull ache in your lower back right now from sitting at a desk, or the way your neck stiffens up when you're stressed out.
Yeah, the human experience is a bit different.
A bit, yeah. Why does a stray cat have this absolute physical perfection while you are just constantly fighting bad posture?
That's a great question.
Right. And it turns out that massive gap between the cat's biological perfection and your stiff neck might actually be the hidden blueprint behind literally all of human civilization.
I mean, it sounds like an absurd leap, right, to connect back pain to the dawn of civilization.
It really does.
But when we look at the structural mechanics of how a body handles physical limitation, we actually uncover a pattern, and this pattern scales up to every major technological leap we've ever made.
Which is just wild.
It is. The exact same structural logic that holds a skeleton upright also dictates how we build machines, and surprisingly enough, how we construct our own consciousness.
And that is the mission of our deep dive today. We're exploring a truly mind-bending text called From Bodily Tensegrity to the Age of AI.
It's a fascinating read.
Highly recommend it. We're going to trace how the physical architecture of human muscles and bones explains our history as a species, and ultimately how it predicts our psychological survival in the new age of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it really changes your perspective.
Completely. So get ready to look at your own physical body and, the technology sitting in your pocket in a completely different way. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the biology.
Let's do it.
The foundational concept in the text is something called tensegrity. Let's establish what that actually means for us physically.
Sure. So tensegrity is a portmanteau of tensional integrity.
Tensional integrity, got it.
Right. It's originally an architectural term, actually.
Yeah.
But biologically, it describes how the human body stays upright. Like, instead of thinking of your skeleton like a stack of bricks where all the weight just pushes straight down.
Which is how I think most of us picture it.
Exactly. But you have to think of it as an interconnected tension network. Your bones are essentially floating.
Floating?
Yeah, floating inside this web of continuous tension.
Yeah.
And that tension is created by your muscles, your ligaments, and importantly, your fascia.
Okay, right, fascia.
Yeah, fascia is that really tough, thin layer of connective tissue. It wraps around every single muscle, bone, and organ in your body, just holding it all together.
Wow.
So in a healthy tensegrity integrated system, if a physical force impacts one area, the strain doesn't just stay there.
It spreads out.
Exactly. It gets instantly distributed across the entire web.
Which I guess brings us back to the cat falling from the tree.
Precisely.
When it lands, the shock of the impact isn't just absorbed by its ankle joints.
Right, that would shatter them.
Yeah. The force ripples through the fascia, through the spine, all the way to the tip of the tail, dissipating safely. I mean, a wild animal isn't consciously trying to activate isolated muscle groups. It just moves as one unified structure.
And in the wild, that whole body integration is a strict biological mandate.
Meaning you need it to live.
Yes. If a predator loses its physical tensegrity, say it develops a localized stiffness in its hip, or it starts compensating for an injury by limping.
It's in trouble.
Major trouble. It loses its mechanical efficiency.
Yeah.
I mean, a stiff cheetah cannot reach its top speed.
Right.
And if it can't run, it can't hunt. And very rapidly, it starves. So for the vast majority of life on Earth, bodily integrity and survival are just inseparable.
But humans seem to have totally opted out of that rule.
We really have.
I mean, we survive just fine with chronic tension, terrible physical conditioning, asymmetrical posture, you name it.
Yeah, stiff neck doesn't stop you from going to work.
Yeah, exactly. I like to think of this bodily tensegrity like a spider web. So if a spider web is perfectly woven and intact, and a fly hits one corner,
the whole thing moves.
right, the vibration travels evenly across every single thread so the spider feels it. The web absorbs the shock collectively.
That's a great analogy.
But if the web is tangled, damaged, glued together in clumps, pulling on one thread puts all the strain on a single anchor point.
And it snaps.
The thread just snaps. We humans are essentially walking around with snapped threads and clump webs all over our bodies. But we don't die from it.
No, we survive it because we built a buffer.
A buffer.
Yes, civilization is, at its core, this elaborate compensation system for our biological dysfunction. I
Wow.
mean, think about it. We don't need perfect biomechanics to forage for food anymore. We just go to a grocery store.
Drive a car there, usually.
Right. We don't need to outrun predators. We build houses with locking doors. We created purchased food, modern medicine, mechanized transportation, social safety nets.
Which raises an uncomfortable thought, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if we didn't entirely lose this bodily integration, did civilization just give humanity a free pass to become physically lazy? Like, did we just construct an entire world designed to coddle our bad backs and weak knees?
What's fascinating here is that it goes much deeper than just giving us a free pass to be lazy.
Deeper how?
Civilization fundamentally decoupled our bodily dysfunction from our survival.
Decoupled it.
Yes.
Uh,
By severing that direct biological link, human evolution took this sharp turn away from the rest of the animal kingdom. We literally stopped needing to adapt our physical forms to survive.
because our physical limitations actually became the driving force of our progress.
Exactly.
Unlike that cheetah that evolves over, countless generations to change its internal biology, like growing a longer spine and a larger heart to run faster harness, humans externalize our capabilities.
We do.
We don't change our bodies to fit the world. We aggressively change the world to fit our bodies.
And that is the core formula of human history. The text actually refers to this dynamic as the discomfort engine.
The discomfort engine, like that.
It makes sense when you break it down. We are born as these vulnerable, hairless, relatively slow bipeds. We feel the freezing cold.
Right, we're basically defenseless.
Yeah. But instead of waiting 100,000 years to evolve thick fur like a polar bear, we invent fire.
We cheat.
Sort of. Then we learn to stitch animal skins into clothing. Then we design insulated shelters and centralized heating systems.
It just escalates.
Right. We realize we are physically weak compared to almost any other large animal, so we forge weapons. We build pulleys. Our sheer physical inadequacy is the catalyst for our environment-altering technology.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Are you suggesting that if early humans had been biologically flawless, like if we were hyper-resilient, never got cold, never experienced muscle fatigue,
We had perfect tensegrity.
perfect, unbreakable bodily tensegrity, are you saying we might still be sleeping in the dirt? That without the physical suffering, we wouldn't have had the initial friction required to invent a single thing?
The text makes exactly that argument.
That is mind-blowing.
It really is.
Yeah.
The foundational prerequisite for human technological advancement is discomfort.
Because it forces action.
Exactly. Discomfort generates an internal state of lack. That lack creates a strong desire for change, which then produces the motivation to act. Without the stiff neck, without the cold, without the physical exhaustion, there is no civilization.
So the limitation itself is the engine.
The limitation is the engine.
But look at the feedback loop that creates. I mean, we use our intelligence to invent technology that improves our environment.
Right.
And that improved environment means we rely on our raw physical resilience even less, which breeds a tolerance for even more bodily weakness.
A compounding effect.
We basically traded in our biological tensegrity for technological tensegrity.
We absolutely did.
Yeah.
And to truly grasp the implications of that trade, we have to look closely at the physics of how structures actually handle change.
Okay, let's go there.
Because if human progress is driven by instability, by our flaws and limitations, then our standard definitions of stability and instability are deeply flawed. Well, most people view them as a binary.
Sure, yeah. Like we think a concrete bunker is stable and a house of cards is unstable.
Right. And in a static, non-living environment, maybe that works.
Yeah.
But in biology and physics, perfect, rigid stability means absolute stasis.
Stasis, meaning nothing is moving.
Exactly. There is no internal change,
Mhm.
which, in a biological organism means death.
Right.
On the other end of the spectrum, perfect instability means structural collapse. So all living systems, and even complex non-living systems, have to operate in a middle ground.
A sort of stable instability. Let's trace that all the way down to the atomic level, because I think the mechanics here are crucial.
Good idea. Let's look at the molecular structure of a material, like a crystal lattice.
Okay.
At a baseline, the atoms are in a stable formation. But when you introduce external kinetic energy like intense heat, for example, the structure doesn't just instantly shatter.
And it adapts.
Right. The bonds between the atoms stretch, the atoms vibrate faster, the structure temporarily destabilizes to absorb the incoming energy. It might even change its state entirely, melting from a solid into a liquid before finding a new, different, stable configuration. Real stability isn't a stubborn refusal to change.
It's the opposite.
Exactly. True stability is the mechanical capacity to absorb change and reorganize.
Think about riding a bicycle. That's a perfect everyday example of this.
Oh, absolutely.
When you are pedaling down the street, you are never actually in a state of static
Right,
balance.
you'd fall over.
Exactly. You are constantly falling slightly to the left, correcting, then falling slightly to the right and correcting again. You are making hundreds of micro adjustments with your core, your arms, your shifting body weight.
You're constantly moving.
Yeah, you literally have to lean into the instability to stay upright. The momentum combined with those continuous micro adjustments creates your balance. If you freeze your muscles completely and demand rigid static stability on a bike, you hit the pavement.
That analogy perfectly illustrates dynamic balance, and
Yeah.
applying that logic back to the human body gives us a brilliant explanation for why we experience chronic pain.
Oh, this is the part I found really fascinating.
Yeah, because in a healthy tensegrity model, the body acts like the bicycle rider. It smoothly transfers physical load through constant micro-adjustment.
Right.
But if you sit hunched over a laptop for 10 hours a day, the physical force gets trapped in your neck and shoulders. The force literally stops flowing.
Because you aren't making those micro adjustments anymore.
Exactly. Your body attempts to create rigid stability in that one area to handle the load, which manifests as a stiff, locked-up muscle.
So the energy gets stuck in one place instead of distributing.
Exactly what happens. That locked muscle creates a temporary rigid stability, but it sacrifices the dynamic balance of the whole system.
The web gets clumped.
Yes. Because your neck is stiff, your upper back has to compensate and take on more load when you move. Then your upper back locks up, which forces your lower back to compensate.
A domino effect.
You trigger a cascading chain reaction of localized overloads. Structural instability occurs when the need to adapt becomes concentrated in one fixed location, rather than being shared across the entire network.
The system breaks down because it loses its fluidity. And here's where we bridge the gap from the physical to the psychological.
This is the pivot.
Because this framework of tension, dynamic balance, and localized overload doesn't just apply to muscles or molecules.
No, it doesn't.
The text argues that this maps seamlessly onto human consciousness, and that is the exact doorway where artificial intelligence walks in and disrupts the entire human project.
The transition from the body to the mind is deeply logical here. Human consciousness operates on its own tensegrity network.
How does that work?
Well, instead of physical forces like gravity or kinetic energy pulling on our bones, our minds are stretched by psychological forces. Things like curiosity, fear, ambition, scarcity, and the need for social connection.
Okay, so when you experience a lack of something, it creates psychological tension.
Exactly.
Like, if I don't know how to build a shelter and a storm is coming, I experience intense fear and tension. And that mental tension forces me to act, to experiment, to learn how to stack stones or weave branches. The deficiency drives the learning process.
That has been the engine of cognitive evolution. And just as early civilization externalized our physical limits, like inventing the pulley so we didn't have to lift heavy stones, AI is now actively externalizing our cognitive limits.
Cognitive limits, right.
Yeah, we were talking about something the text calls our semantic limits.
Let's define semantic limits for everyone, because that's a pretty dense term.
Fair enough.
Semantics deals with meaning in language and logic. So our semantic limits are our boundaries of problem-solving, coding, writing, researching, and synthesizing meaning. Historically, if you hit a semantic limit, you had to struggle through it.
The traditional pattern of human mastery was built entirely on that struggle.
Right.
When something like this, I cannot do this complex task, I lack the capability, therefore I will dedicate 10,000 hours to practicing it.
The old Malcolm Gladwell rule.
Right. Through intense cognitive friction and frustration, I will acquire the ability, and as a reward for that friction, I will gain a significant social or economic advantage over those who did not put in the time.
But the AI pattern completely short-circuits that loop.
It obliterates it.
The new pattern is, I cannot do this complex task, therefore I will type a prompt, and the AI will do it for me.
It's that simple.
AI offers nearly universal, instant access to elite-level cognitive capabilities without requiring any of the underlying friction.
None of the struggle.
So what does this all mean? If the immense personal cost of mastering a specialized skill out in the real world suddenly outweighs the economic advantage it gives you, because any novice with an internet connection can simulate that same skill in 3 seconds, doesn't that obliterate the entire incentive structure we use to motivate students in school or employees in the workforce?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it absolutely shatters the traditional motivation model.
It has to, right?
Yes. Think about the Industrial Revolution. The mechanical tractor replaced human muscle, sure. But the farmers still had to strategize, plan the crops, and direct the machine.
The brain was still required.
Exactly.
Yeah.
AI is different. It doesn't just replace the physical labor, it replaces the strategic planning. It is externalizing our ignorance.
Wow, externalizing our ignorance.
It handles our complex data analysis. It even externalizes our social isolation by acting as a conversational companion. AI is systematically dismantling the forces of psychological tension, the scarcity and the struggle that have relentlessly pulled humanity forward for millennia.
Let's follow that to its logical conclusion then.
Okay.
If AI successfully fulfills all of our intellectual, analytical, and even conversational needs before we even have to struggle for them, wait, let me rephrase, before we even feel the lack,
Right.
the foundational engine of human history, that discomfort engine built on deficiency, it just turns off.
It powers down.
We are staring down the barrel of a completely unprecedented crisis of motivation.
The crisis we are approaching isn't about a lack of resources or a lack of capability. We will possess almost infinite synthetic capability.
We can do anything.
Exactly. The crisis will be a profound lack of reason to utilize that capability. The text actually describes this as a semantic imbalance.
Meaning we will be absolutely drowning in high-level output, perfectly written code, flawless essays, incredible generated art, but we will be starved for the intrinsic motivation to produce anything ourselves.
Yes.
We pivot from the historical mindset of, I cannot do this, so I must struggle to become capable, to the modern dilemma of, I can do absolutely anything instantly, but why should I bother?
That is the semantic imbalance perfectly summarized. The output is completely decoupled from the human effort that previously gave that output its meaning.
Which is terrifying.
It is. How do you generate a sense of purpose in a society where necessity, which is the ultimate catalyst for action, has been artificially engineered out of existence?
I have to challenge this premise just a bit because I can easily see people completely despairing over this scenario.
Sure.
If every learning curve, every intellectual puzzle, and every creative struggle is seamlessly outsourced to a machine, won't we just atrophy? Aren't we facing a future where humanity just floats in a psychological, sensory deprivation tank of pure, uninterrupted convenience, completely numb to the world?
That's the existential threat, definitely. But we shouldn't view it as inevitable numbness.
No.
No. It's better understood as a crisis of initiation.
Okay, explain that.
If we cling to the archaic scarcity model of motivation, where we sit around waiting to feel a deep deficiency or fear before we decide to act, then yes, we will atrophy in that sensory deprivation tank.
Because AI fixes the deficiency instantly.
Exactly. It preemptively patches every deficiency before we can even register the discomfort.
Right.
To survive this computationally, we have to fundamentally evolve our internal operating system. We have to discover a way to initiate action when sheer capability is no longer the bottleneck.
So how does a person actually do that? How do you find profound meaning in your life when you have access to a machine that can execute your ideas better and faster than you ever could?
The text points to a massive, and I think incredibly beautiful, shift in human inclination.
A shift toward what?
The text suggests we will witness a collective migration away from an inclination focused on filling a deficiency and toward an inclination focused entirely on direct experience.
Let's break that down.
Okay, an AI can generate a technically flawless symphony. It can speedrun a complex video game perfectly. It can write a devastatingly sad poem.
And it does all of that in seconds.
Right. But it cannot subjectively experience the goosebumps of hearing a cello.
Oh, wow.
It cannot feel the adrenaline of a close match or the catharsis of writing through grief. It processes the objective output, but it possesses zero inner life.
Which means we are going to see a massive cultural return to the physical body. Suddenly, the act of touching raw materials, cooking a meal from scratch, hiking a difficult trail, or practicing a physical martial art gains immense premium value.
Because the machine can't feel it.
Right. Not because it is the most efficient way to achieve an end goal, but simply because Inhabiting a biological human body and feeling the friction of the physical world is a uniquely human domain that AI fundamentally cannot touch.
We're going to see a renaissance of manual, inefficient creation.
I love that phrase, inefficient creation.
People will carve wood, paint on physical canvases, and bake bread, consciously choosing the slower, harder path purely for the sake of direct participation in the process.
This perfectly explains why, in a world dominated by ultra high definition smartphone cameras, there is a massive resurgence of people shooting physical 35mm film.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
Right, people are developing film in darkrooms with smelly chemicals. It's not because we lack automated digital perfection, we have that in our pockets.
Inefficiency is the point.
Yes. The friction of loading the film, the risk of ruining the exposure, the physical reality of the darkroom that is where the joy lives. The value is no longer in the final photograph. The value is in the human experience of creating it.
This raises an important question about how we calibrate our minds moving forward,
Okay.
because the entire cultural metric for meaning will shift. For thousands of years, the dominant question society asked you was, what did you produce?
Because producing things was incredibly difficult and required intense labor.
Right. But the dominant question of the AI era will be, why did you choose to experience producing that?
Because the action won't be born out of a compulsive imbalance anymore.
Exactly.
You won't be frantically painting or coding or building out of a desperate need to survive or out of a fear of scarcity. The action will originate from a stable, balanced state of mind.
It's a dynamic balance.
Right. You will be able to look at the world and say, I am physically and cognitively secure. I don't need to alter this environment to survive. But this specific process is deeply interesting to me, and I choose to engage with it.
If we look back to the beginning of our discussion, back to the anatomical tensegrity of the body, a perfectly integrated, healthy, physical body moves smoothly through the world without localized muscle tension or chronic pain.
It just flows.
It simply flows. The text posits that a healthy, integrated future mind must function identically.
Wow.
It must learn to generate meaningful, creative action without requiring the immense psychological tension of suffering, scarcity, or fear to get it moving. It is the mastery of acting from a place of dynamic balance.
Taking a step back and looking at the sheer scope of this deep dive, the structural symmetry is just breathtaking.
It really connects everything.
It does. I mean, we started by mapping how dynamic balance allows atoms to absorb energy without shattering. We saw how that exact same principle scales up to create the tensegrity network in human muscles and fascia.
And how losing that physical tensegrity actually built our world.
Exactly. We traced how the loss of that biological perfection drove the discomfort engine that built human civilization. And finally, we discovered how that identical structural logic applies to human consciousness as we collide with the AI era.
It's all the same pattern.
It all drives toward one profound conclusion. Humanity's next evolutionary stage is learning how to act, create, and explore without the prerequisite of suffering.
We are attempting the ultimate transition.
Yeah.
We are moving from a species that acts because it suffers to a species that acts out of sheer curiosity and the joy of experience, even when the suffering has been outsourced entirely.
Which means for you, navigating this new landscape, your ultimate value in the future has nothing to do with how efficiently you can produce data or output. The algorithms have that covered.
Fully covered.
Your true, irreplaceable value is your unique biological capacity to subjectively experience the world. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, something to consider as you watch these technologies advance.
Let's hear it.
If our entire biological and civilizational history has been forged by adapting our environment to fix our weaknesses, what happens to human evolution when the environment, through predictive AI, instantly adapts to every thought we have before we even register a need? Will we eventually have to construct artificial physical and mental hardships, synthetic struggles, and engineered friction just to remind ourselves what it actually feels like to be human?